Last episode, we talked about some of the similarities and some of the key differences between Texas Hold'em and Pot Limit Omaha. Today, we're going to take it one step further and show you the most important things you need to learn that are unique to PLO. Almost everything we're going to talk about has to do with the fact that in Omaha, you get 4 hole cards. So let's start right there and dive into the kinds of starting hands you should be playing as a beginner. If you're used to playing Hold'em, you'll know that a lot of the play happens before the flop. Pot Limit Omaha, on the other hand, is much more of a post-flop game. The biggest reason for that is when you get 4 hole cards, no hand is that big of a favorite over any other hand before you see the community cards. In Hold'em, for example, pre-flop, pocket aces are about 80% to win against any other random hand. But in Omaha, the pre-flop edges are much thinner. A lot of players take that to mean that they can play almost any starting hand. Don't make that mistake. Strong starting hands turn into strong post-flop hands. And by focusing on hands that make the nuts more often, it's way more likely that you'll be the one coolering another player who has the second or third best hand. So, to reiterate, don't get sucked into playing every hand, especially as a beginner. Just like in Hold'em, when you start to get more experience, you can start to loosen up. But until then, keep it simple and focus on strong starting hands. Just like Texas Hold'em, choosing which hands to play and which to fold in Omaha depends on a few factors. The biggest among them are your position and the strength of the hand itself. From your experience in Hold'em, you probably remember that position is really important. Well, in Omaha, it's even more important. With 4 hole cards, it's way harder to put your opponent on a range of hands, and since it's pot limit, the amount you can bet and raise depends on how much is in the pot. Essentially, what that last point means is that when you're out of position and decide to bet out, you're opening the door for your opponent to make a much bigger raise, whether he's doing it for value or to try to bluff you off your hand. Sure, there's going to be times when you're in early position and you pick up a monster and decide to play it. But the truth is, you're never going to be that much of a favorite, and you're going to find yourself in tricky spots after the flop because you're out of position. As a beginner, you can avoid a lot of these problems by trying to play in position as much as possible. The best possible starting hand in Omaha is ace-ace, king-king, double suited. As a Hold'em player, you might think that the second best hand would be ace-ace, queen-queen double suited, but it's not. It's actually ace-ace, jack-10 double suited. And once you understand that, you'll start to understand how to evaluate starting hand strength in Omaha. When you first look down at your hand in Omaha, you want to think about 3 main things. Connectedness. In Hold'em, suited connectors are great, so imagine how powerful 4 cards in a row can be. 1 and 2 gappers can also be really strong hands. Suited or double suited. Double suited hands are really powerful in Omaha because they can make more flushes. Big cards are better. Whether you have pocket pairs, 4 cards in a row, or a double suited hand, the bigger the cards are, the better. You want cards that are more likely to make the nuts. In PLO, a lot of your profit will come from making the nuts and winning a big pot from another player who has the second or third best hand. To be clear, if you have 2 big pairs, it's always a strong starting hand. But when it comes to making hands like straights and flushes, big, connected cards that are suited are also really powerful. Like we talked about before, when you get involved in a hand, it's way better to be in position. So it shouldn't be too surprising that your opening hand range should get wider the better your position gets. Because there's less people still to act, and you're going to have position for the rest of the hand, you can profitably raise tons of hands that you'd normally be folding from early position. Here's a rough idea of the kinds of starting hands you should be raising with when it folds to you. This is definitely on the conservative side, but as a beginner, playing tight and choosing good starting hands will help keep you out of trouble. From early position, you should only raise with really strong hands like 2 big pairs, big pocket pairs, especially when the other 2 cards add to your hand by being connected or suited, and big rundowns that are suited or double suited. When your position improves, you can start adding lower suited rundowns and lower pocket pair hands that are also connected and or suited in some way. When you have good position, you can raise way more hands when it folds to you, so you can add in lower pocket pairs that have less connectedness and rundowns that have gaps or danglers. In Omaha, there are more than 16,000 unique starting hands, so it's pretty hard to come up with a chart that covers everything. It's way better to understand those 3 factors that we talked about earlier and evaluate your starting hands based on connectedness, suitedness, and how big the cards are. Then you can consider other factors like your position at the table and the opponents that are still to act when you're deciding whether to raise. So, now that you know a little bit more about the hands that are playable in PLO, in the next episode, we'll take a closer look at some of the trouble hands that you need to watch out for and how to avoid them.